Well, good morning, good evening, good night, and it's warm. Anyways, I am welcome to another episode of Chapter and Verse, and I probably should have finished that first sentence first. I am Craig McKibben, so that's not my name. Wasn't that whole other second sentence? But I think you can probably surmise that yourself. Anyways, I am glad to be with you. Sorry about last week. My schedule just doesn't always line up now with when I can be available. So, anyways, but I am available right now. And so hopefully you are available right now or available later. And so you are joining us on the fly as it's coming on, or you are joining when. Ever you come on. And so that's great. And as always, I always encourage people to say hi in the comment section. I don't care if it is 10 years from now. I think it'd be great because I have this little thing on my phone, which and on Facebook and on YouTube, by the way, because this goes on YouTube. I'll put the link in there for YouTube for those of you who want to share it. But I set my notifications on. So that way, whenever well, in this case, like if you set your notifications on that I'm there, then you can say, hey, I am, new videos come on. And so that's really cool. But anyways, yeah, just say hi in the comment section. I love that interaction as we are in the, I guess we say the fourth act, I guess, of this play called, well, it's not really a play, it's not a play, this thing called Acts. And we're kind of coming into the end of the storyline. And so I am excited to be with you. And so anyways, yeah, we're going to start up here. And I am trusting that it is running. I'm just going to look at something here just to make sure. Yeah, it looks like things are going okay. So, my screen looks totally different than what your screen would look like, but that's why one of the reasons why I encourage you to say hi in the comment section. That's one thing that pops up right away. Jeff. Jen. Hey, Jen. It's great to see you. Yeah, it's awesome. Okay. JB, it's good to have you with me, man. Okay. So I'm just going to pray and then we're going to jump in. Okay, cool. Great. All right. So God, I want to thank you for today. I want to thank you that we can continue to look at your word and it can speak to our lives where we are. And I pray that today would be one of those days, Lord, that when we hear the stories of others, especially because you wanted it to be written for us, that they can really resonate in our hearts and help us with the struggles that we deal with in our own lives. In your name, Jesus. Amen. All right. So today is going to be an interesting talk. It's going to be an interesting challenge here, or for me, because I think it's in over whatever we're 200. This is, I think, the 206th episode of this, whatever we've been doing. We've been going through different books of the Bible and stuff. But this is one of the first times where I was like going, okay, God, it's not really pronounced huge what you want to say. So it's really cool for me in this sort of scenario because these are one of those moments that I go, okay, I'm going to be obedient to it because I have always felt as though it has spoken to myself in a powerful way and others. And the cool thing is that over the years, I've heard how the certain things would pop out to somebody else. And so I think this is going to be one of those times because it's not that there's nothing in here. It's just that what the passage is about is kind of the lead up to next week. So next week is going to be an interesting story because that's where Paul is going to be retelling the story of the Damascus Road experience, but he's the one telling it. So it's going to come from his perspective. It's not just what he told Luke and then Luke wrote down and stuff. This is now him sharing that story with a lot of people, but we've got to get to the lot of people. We got to get to the why behind it first. Okay, so we're in chapter 21 and I'm going to be like verse 25-ish, kind of a break in the middle of that verse, and then we're going to keep going from there. All right. So it says that, take these 4 Jewish followers of Jesus with you to help squelch the lies that you no longer care about the Jews. Okay. Only the Gentiles. So remember, like, Paul's come back to Jerusalem to a cacophony of noise, which I guess is a bit of a redundancy. The Department of Redundancy department. So you've got this. He's coming to this big like hoopla about him, and there's all these rumors about the fact that he doesn't care about the Jews anymore. He only cares about the Gentiles, and so he's like, okay, well, what do I need to do? Because I want to make sure that the Jews know that no, this is not about that. So there's this whole purification plan that's in play, right? And in place here. So this is where we're going. So verse 26, and you can listen to that last episode here or on Facebook or on YouTube. Okay. So verse 26 says, so the next day, he spares no time, Paul took the men, having purified himself along with them. So catch this. It was the ideas of the leaders to say, hey, why don't you go with these 4 people who have been purified, to say, no, you care about the Jews. And then Paul is going, no, I'm going to purify myself too. I'm going to take one for the team as well. Catch this. Not that I need to, because this is the point, that because of Jesus, there's grace. Okay, because of Jesus, there's freedom. That's what he's trying to get at. Because of Jesus, the law, catch that, the law has been, big word, fulfilled. And as I'm talking, I'm starting to already think, okay, God, this is why we're in this text. So it's cool. You're going to hear some stuff in real time here. So why the law is being fulfilled. Okay. So we have to get to that point. So let me keep going here. Okay. So it says he purified himself along with them, and entered the temple, announcing the completion of the purification days when the offering would be made for each of them. Okay, so he was going to do what the law wanted him to do. Okay, or the law demanded him to do, but it didn't matter anymore. Okay, but it was no longer mandated. This offering was no longer mandated because of the cross. Okay, but he did it out of reverence for God and the Jews. Catch this: the Jews' limited growth. Okay, they hadn't got to that place yet. And if you want to jump at some point to Romans 13 to 15, and we've done a whole study on Romans as well, but Romans 13 to 15, this idea of the teaching of, you know what? Look, everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible, but not everything is constructive, right? That's in 1 Corinthians. But then in Romans, he's saying, you know what? If the person like won't eat meat and has a big issue with meat, and you can eat meat, then don't eat meat. It's not worth it. Okay. It's not worth being the stumbling block. Okay. So this is what Paul's doing. He's like, so I cut my hair. Well, okay. Like, it's not worth it for people to not find out about Jesus, right? So this is where it goes on. He says, verse 27, when the 7 days were nearly over, some Jews from the province of Asia, okay, saw him in the temple, stirred up the whole crowd, and seized him. And I'm telling you, when you're a pastor and you see three words all starting with the same letter and they're verbs, I am telling you, that is like gold. So like, someone wants to preach a message on that, I've already thought about what it could be. I don't have time to talk about it, but like, they saw him in the temple, they stirred up the whole crowd, okay, and they seized him, shouting, catch this, fellow Israelites, help, okay? What deceit is there? Like, help, okay? This is the man who teaches, catch this, everyone, everywhere against our people, okay? Our law and this place. So I'm going to read that again. It says, this is the man who teaches everyone, everywhere against our people, our law, and this place. So here's something I want to let you know. It says, if I told you a million times to never use always every time, okay? A million times. I have never, or to never use always every time, right? That is such a tool that is, we talk about it in marriage counseling, we'll talk about it in conflict resolution, in crucial conversations, that, well, you never, you hear, this is what they're doing. They're trying to blanket statement thing. And here's the thing that I find, and I wish I had the time to go on this, but he goes on to say, against our people, our law, and this place. That is the devil's playbook every single time, to pit people against each other, to find ways to pit people against one another and say, no, you're not, no. And that's, division is so, sorry, I need to take a sip here. Someone want to put this in the comment section, just almost out of embarrassment. I was about to say, division is so divisive. It is, but okay, but that's so true. Okay, but it's a devil here playbook. I don't have time to go with that. Maybe I'll sort of circle back to this. Okay, he says, what's more, he also brought Greeks into the temple and has defiled the holy place. Okay, for they had previously seen Trophimus, the Ephesian, in the city with him, and they, catch this, supposed, right? They assumed, they presumed, but they didn't say it that way. No. They came out as fact, right? They supposed that Paul had brought him into the temple, okay? Now, that bringing a Gentile into the temple, capital offense. Okay, that is what they're getting at with the Jews. Okay, okay, that's the way it is. All right, verse 30 says this: the whole city was stirred up. Yeah, it's a capital offense. It's a lie, but it's a capital offense. And the people rushed together. They seized Paul, dragged him out of the temple, and at once the gates were shut. So let me say this again. They seized Paul, dragged him out of the temple, and at once the gates were shut. And let me be clear, this is not what the Bible's talking about. So this was my own personal observation. I don't feel like Holy Spirit was saying, hey, Craig, make sure to say this. But you know what? There's something in there. It's this point here, is that sometimes I wonder who we drag out of the temples, who we accuse or presume or assume things about certain people, or we stare at them, or we give them attitude, or we don't really care about them because they don't look like us or act like us or talk like us. And we may not be dragging them out by the hair, but we drag them out with our ignorance. We drag them out with our stuffiness, with our exclusion. I don't know. I think there's something in there. Let me know in the comments or send me a message about that. Verse 31, here we go. As they were trying to kill him, okay, that escalated. So as they were trying to kill him, word went up to the commander of the regiment that all Jerusalem was in chaos, taking along soldiers and centurions. So let's be clear here. Centurions, okay, sent 100. That's a lot of them, okay? They're leaders. So it's not a small crowd of soldiers he's bringing with him, all right? So it's taking along soldiers and centurions, he immediately ran down to them. Seeing the commander and the soldiers, they stopped beating Paul. I just have to say this. I am sorry. I think that's funny. I know I have sick sense of humor, but that to me is not quite comedic relief, but I just think of like when, when we're kids and you're playing and you're roughhousing and stuff and mom walks in the room. Boop, what are you doing? Nothing? Well, nope. Nothing to see here. Nope. That's fine. Right. Or, you've been playing with a dead cat or something. Okay. I never did, but I mean, like, I don't know, you're doing something that you're not supposed to be doing. And then it's like, all of a sudden the authority comes and then you're just like, yep. And why I bring that up is that I like when some people say, or like when you're dating, leave room for Jesus. or remember Jesus is with you. Like sometimes when you think, okay, the authority's there, you act a little bit differently. And so I don't know, I just found that lighthearted. Probably not comedic, but lighthearted. Okay. All right. So when I get to heaven, Paul's gonna be like, okay, so them trying to kill me, you thought was funny? Okay, I'll apologize to him when I get up there. All right, let's keep going. Verse 33 says, then the commander approached, took him into custody, and ordered him to be bound with 2 chains. He asked who he was and what he had done. Some in the crowd, okay, were shouting one thing and some another. Since he was not able to get reliable information because of the uproar, which is what happens, okay, he ordered him to be taken into the barracks. When Paul got to the steps, he had to be carried by the soldiers because of the violence of the crowd. It is like, it's just bad, okay? For the mass of people followed, yelling, get rid of him. That's like, I don't know, like I don't think I'd want to be in a situation like that it's like, yeah. Okay, let's keep going. Verse 37 says this. As he was about to be brought into the barracks, Paul said to the commander, am I allowed to say something to you? He replied, you know how to speak Greek? Aren't you the Egyptian who started a revolt some time ago and led 4,000 men of the assassins into the wilderness? Back up. Okay, what is that you're saying there? Okay, so let me jump into this again. He says, aren't you the Egyptian who started a revolt some time ago and led 4,000 men of the assassins into the wilderness? Okay, what's he talking about? What's he talking about? So, like, when I look at that, I go, Moses? Like, are you, what? And so, of course, my little spidey senses, I'm like, okay, something's up here. Okay, I gotta check into this. This I find very interesting, and interesting for an interesting reason. Okay, so here it's you need to know this, that I don't believe that anything in the Bible is filler. Okay, it's 1,089 chapters, I think it is, and 66 books. And depending on the book of Bible you have, how many pages it is, but it's like spanning a whole lot of time, and so everything that's in there matters. God put it there for a reason. So why would this verse be there? Why would Luke feel compelled to write that in the conversation that took place? Think of it. Luke is writing in real time. That is profound. Yes, he was writing in real time. But he was writing about current events, is probably what I'm trying to say. About current events, about what was happening at that time. So it would have been something that would have been read around by different people, different areas, and whatnot. Okay. So does that mean that something was going on at that time about some Egyptian, like in, we'll call it JNN, it's the Jerusalem network, news network, right? Was something going on at that time here? He is speaking to the misinformation and the misunderstandings that were happening in that day. The cool thing is, Luke wasn't the only person writing about history at that time. And there were people that weren't Christians that were doing the same thing. Josephus, okay, who was a first century Jewish historian, talks about Jesus. He brings veracity, that's a big word. He brings validity and truth to the facts that we find. It's kind of like when archaeologists find something, they'll go, oh, we just found Jericho or something like that, right? It's like that aligns now with the Bible, shows that the Bible actually was accurate. So what happened was Josephus was talking about at around the same time, about 60 AD, that there was this Egyptian that came into Jerusalem and professed that he was a prophet, had thousands of followers. They met out on the Mount of Olives, interestingly enough, out of the Mount of Olives, and he had predicted that the walls of Jerusalem would collapse much like Jericho. Interesting, I mentioned Jericho a moment ago. But yeah, they would collapse like Jericho. So there was this uprising. Well, Felix, who was the Roman governor at the time, he freaks out and he says, no, not today, Satan, right? Like he just like, nope. So he squelches that thing. He comes in with violence and he takes out those people. He says, that's not happening. Maybe because he's seen these kind of revolts in the past or whatever. And he's like, this is not going to happen here. So they had this brutal campaign to wipe out this sect, and the Egyptian disappears, right? The Egyptian gets away. So he's on the loose. So now we have, think of it, this whole group saying, ha, we found the Egyptian. We found the guy. And so they get down there, and then it's like, oh, aren't you that guy? And Paul's like, no. And he's in chains and is like, let my people go. Sorry, he didn't say that. But like, this is where he's bringing that up. And I love it because it talks about the veracity, okay? I also love this part. Well, love is probably a sarcastic word, but I love how the irony, okay, of how bad this information gets, how bad the story is going, right? Think of it. They rush down there. The people are accusing Paul of being this violent revolutionary, okay? And the truth is, he's trying to bring peace. He's this minister of peace, right? The Romans think, oh, this guy must be a terrorist, right? And yet you have the Jews also saying he's a lawbreaker, okay? Claiming that he's a lawbreaker, and this will come up again. But he actually just fulfilled the law that didn't matter to be able to reach out to these people, yet they're not willing to do it, okay? He's responding to God's call to actually unite the Gentiles, unite the Jews, and yet there's this thought that, no, he's this political liberator, okay? No, he's a spiritual liberator, right? That's the cool thing about this. Okay, let's keep going. Verse 39 says, Paul says, I am a Jewish man from Tarsus of Cilicia, okay? A citizen, catch word, that's not a light word, a citizen of an important city. So do you know who are citizens? Roman citizens, okay? It's not that he lived in Tarsus of Cilicia. He lived like as a Canadian citizen. He lived there with all the rights as a Canadian. So he wasn't a landed immigrant. He wasn't seen as a person who was a permanent residence. He wasn't sponsored. He wasn't on a work visa. He wasn't on it. No. He was a citizen. And just like in Canada, as a Canadian citizen, you have certain rights, okay? And so he is saying to them, look, I'm a Jew from Tarsus, from Cilicia, okay? A citizen there, a citizen of an important city. Now, I ask you, let me speak to the people. After he, being the leader, commander, had given permission, Paul stood on the steps and motioned with his hand to the people. When there was a great hush, he addressed them in Aramaic, okay? Which is, do I say it now? Do I say it later? I think I'll say it in a bit. Okay. Anyways, I couldn't find my thing. So chapter 22, that is the bell. Sorry, I didn't have time to get that there. So yes, we're in chapter 2, baby. Okay, here we go. Okay. Brothers and fathers, listen now to my defense before you. When they heard that he was addressing them in Aramaic, they became even quieter. So this is why I wanted to wait a second. Why did he use Aramaic? He could have spoken in Hebrew, okay? But he spoke in Aramaic, which was the common language of the people. It was the common language. He could have spoken in Greek too, and they probably would have understood it. But he did all this stuff. He made sure to do everything he could to be able to not pretend or not mimic being a Jew, but to reveal his Jewishness, I guess is the right word, or whatever, the fact that he himself was a Jew. He was trying to show we're common. Okay, let's keep going. He continued, I am a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city, educated at the feet of Gamaliel. Okay, I'm going to get to that in a second, but let me just come back to this. What's the very first thing he says? He says this. He says, brother and sisters, listen up fine. What's his defense? I am a Jew. I love the fact that he starts with theology. Or sorry, he starts with his identity rather than theology. He doesn't say, listen, this is what God said. No. The very first thing he does is tries to find common ground, tries to find that place of saying, look, we have this together. And I have to say that when I've had conversations with people about God or whatever, it's beautiful when God crafts those conversations, and maybe you've had similar experiences, when God crafts those conversations stemming from something you've both gone through. So maybe, I'm going to get dark here for a second, but maybe it would be like the death of my father. And so somebody else, had a death of their father or a parent. And you just talk about like what that felt like. And then you can somehow talk about how God is there for you. And, now he's your heavenly father, but now you can just relate to him differently. And then when you become a father, then you just realize that it's just momentary. You only here for a while, and that God, heaven forbid, but it's going to happen more than likely unless he comes back, that you are going to expire before your child or children grow. So see, it gets dark. But here's the thing, like God gives you these common stories so that you can relate and share your message of hope. And I just love that. Right? We're to be witnesses. And so witnesses come when we are telling stories. And that's what this whole book is about, being witnesses. Okay. So he says here, but I brought up in this city, educated at the feet of Gamaliel. I'll get to that in a second. Let me read it as a text, and then I'll just kind of jump in on what I want to say. I'm a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city, meaning Jerusalem, educated at the feet of Gamaliel according to the strictness of our ancestral law. I was zealous for God, just as all of you are today. Okay, so let me give you the Craig McKibben version. Like maybe there's accusations or whatever about, my spirituality. And I just say, listen, I grew up in the church, and for 10 years, I was one of Billy Graham's personal mentees. He was mentoring me for over 10 years. Okay. That's what he's saying. Gamaliel, bing, he's on the top of the chain when it comes to the rabbis. Okay. Like that guy, like if you became, because remember, rabbis chose their students, chose their disciples. They didn't just, you didn't just get joined the group. No. If you were invited. And so Paul's like, the best of the best, I had a personal invite to be mentored by that person. So like he's saying, I've got credibility here, okay, in what's going on here. Like if anything, you should be able to understand that. Okay. So he goes on and says, I persecuted the way. I persecuted Christians. That's what I did when I was with Gamaliel, when I was like part of the Sanhedrin and all that. That was my job. Like I persecuted this way to the death, arresting and putting both men and women in jail. Stephen, back in Acts 6, right? That's where we start seeing this Saul guy that turns into Paul, okay? As both the high priest and the whole council of elders can testify about me. After I received letters from them to the brothers, I traveled to Damascus to arrest those who were there and to bring them to Jerusalem. Bring them back here, Jack, to be punished. And we're going to stop right there because next week, Paul is going to go into, he's going to give his side of the story about what happened on that road to Damascus. So just some things to think about over the course of the next week or so. Just ask yourself this. It's like, am I contributing to the rumors that I hear about other things? Am I spreading stuff that isn't even verified yet? I'm just going based on what other people are saying. That there's something about getting something from the horse's mouth. And as much as possible, I try to do that because I want to hear it from the person, because you and I both know it can be twisted. And I don't know why we do that, because we have all, I suppose, and I'm pretty accurate, I'm sure, we've all had people that have said terrible things that are untrue about us. But why do we do the same thing about other people? Right? It's just not, it's not fair. It's not, I mean, fair in the sense of it's just not balanced, right? Just remember that. So like, don't be contributing to the rumors. But secondly, find the common ground to be able to talk to those people. Talk to people who maybe have something against you, right? That's what Jesus says. You know what? He doesn't flip it and say, well, you know what? If you're upset with somebody, leave your offering at the altar and go make amends. No, he says, if somebody has something against you, then leave your offering at the altar and go make things right. So, like, find that common place to be able to talk about that. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, 7:00. As I said, next week we are going to be looking at the Paul side of the story. Remember what I said. Put your notifications on, and then that way, next time I'm on, bing, you'll just get a notification, or YouTube that a new one has been uploaded. But as always, I love to end with some sort of wisdom, and I just thought of this. That what do you call a spider with 10 eyes? A spider. All right, till next time, God bless you. Go in peace.